Internet friends. Welcome to another episode of the Synergy Cafe online show, featuring speaker, entertainer, close-up illusionist, and marketing alchemist, Magic Brad. It's the Internet lifestyle show about career, finance, relationships, spirituality, and wellness. We're moving the online chatter over to real-life activity. And now, please welcome your host of Synergy Cafe, Magic Brad.
Hey, Internet friends, this is Magic Brad. I'm here with my co-host. His name is Casey. How you doing, Casey?
Doing good. You?
I don't know. So this is the first time we've done this, so I'm not sure how it's working. Not even sure if you can actually hear what's going on. But if you can't, you're going to have to read lips, and then we'll just mime our way through it. So this is a new idea for a show that we've been talking about, and we don't really have a topic yet, so I guess it's kind of Joe Rogan-esque.
Right. Yeah, we're just kind of winging it.
Yeah, but we did talk about it. I wanted to do something that was kind of magical. And then we had some more conversation and we thought, you know what, there's not really, there used to be a thing called The Man Show. I remember on TV.
There was.
But we're going to do something about, that may talk a little bit about man's issues. So
Yeah. Minus the girls jumping on trampolines with no support.
Yeah, that was the more, what do they call that, misogynistic or whatever?
Yeah, and modernly they would call it lots of fan service. It comes from a Japanese anime.
Do you get into that stuff?
Japanese anime?
Yeah.
Oh, I love Japanese anime. There's some really good Japanese anime that's out there. I think actually it's some of the better storytelling that's out there right now.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unique stories. There's a couple of really good ones, like Tokyo Ghoul is really good. It's darker, but it's yeah, I like it. It's pretty amazing. And there's a bunch out there that are run the whole gambit. You've got, for the younger audience, you've got for, an audience that's really kind of more of for lack of a better term, immature viewing. Then you have like really mature subject matter that's out there. That's that kind of questions what it.
Okay, so kind of like Saturday morning cartoons for the kids, and then South Park for the adults. Different cartoon.
More serious than that. It's more like watching an intense drama, like or something that questions reality. I would say it's every bit as intense as Death of a Salesman.
Let me see if this works. Okay. We're doing a sound check. But there it is.
Yeah, we got to hear you talk, though.
Okay.
Yep, we heard you.
We're doing a sound check. Okay, we're good. We're good. We're good with the sound check. Deja vu.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can hear us. Feel free to comment below if you are on YouTube or Facebook. And I'm also going live on LinkedIn, I believe.
Nice.
So make some comments, and then we'll have the raw file to share with people. If you want a copy, they're free now, but maybe someday they'll be very expensive.
Let's hope.
Okay, so the anime thing, what kind of stories are you talking about? Because I don't understand all that stuff. I don't know if it's because of my old brain or whatever, but it tells stories. What are you talking about?
It's honestly just like every other stories that are out there as far as like, storytelling goes. The methodology is unique. So anime has its own symbolism and everything behind it. So like in Japanese culture, whenever they're showing like movies or scenes in anime, things like that, there's like a girl about to lose her virginity, and you'll see the tree that's it'll be a cherry tree and the cherry blossoms begin to fall. So it's like a bunch of symbolism behind things. So there's a lot of symbolism in it that's actually very unique to Japanese Shinto culture.
Okay.
So that's pretty fascinating in and of itself. But the storytelling, I just find that the storytelling is just superior to a lot of the things that are out there right now, because I'm feeling like most of the storytelling that's out there is very rote right now.
Very what?
Rote.
Okay.
ROTE. Yeah, so I just feel like it's not very imaginative anymore. They're kind of just rehashing a bunch of old stories. And so now to the point to where they're going to comic books, but they're not even telling a whole bunch of new comics. They're telling the same comics over and over and over again. They're like, oh, tried and true. We just want to have a money machine. And that's what I feel is what's going on with a lot of
Like
stories.
reruns of Gilligan's Island.
Like reruns of Gilligan's Island. Yeah. Or I Love Lucy. You know it's going to make money.
So the anime stuff, it also kind of falls maybe into the Asian Pokemon thing. And that's another thing I don't quite understand. The whole gaming or like the Magic the Gathering games and stuff like that.
Yeah.
For some reason, I can't wrap my head around that stuff. I can't quite grasp it. But I was at a business networking event the other day, and there was a guy that worked for the cable company, the Comcast or whatever.
Sure.
He was talking about these kids in their 20s doing something like $300,000 a month with these Pokemon cards.
Right.
So I'm missing out on something.
Yeah. I would say in regards to Pokemon cards and things like that, I'm probably closer to your camp than I am, say, my kids' camp. Because, I was kind of before the generation of Pokemon. My brother gets it though. My two brothers, they're twins, 9 years younger than I am. They play a lot of Pokemon. They've been playing since it first started.
This is kind of weird because I'm going through like my second midlife crisis because I had one. You ever had one?
Oh yeah.
Everything was just. I did it right on time, right on schedule at 40 years old, and everything collapsed. And it's like I had to rebuild my whole life. I couldn't figure things out. But I'm going through another one right now, so I guess this would be like a end of life crisis. I'm 66, and I'm shooting for 100.
Yeah.
So I'm getting up there, and I'm trying to grasp a lot of these things that don't make any sense. Like there's another friend of mine. His son is making like 15 grand a month with a little animated. It's called Ice Cream Social. And it's just this weird looking stick man kid. He kind of looks like a chicken with his hair all funny. And he just says stuff like, my sister's not ready for school yet. She's going to get in trouble because we have to go to school. And he's making all this money because he does these little thingies and people watch him. So it's that kind of thing that I can't grasp. You're talking about these stories and they've got these images behind it. My logical brain wants to hear a story like the Three Little Bears, that kind of story. The bears look like bears rather than some kind of weird image. And this is kind of segueing into the with this stuff that's happened with me. I know that I got some blocks, some childhood blocks that are subconscious that. It's hard for me to access them, and I don't want to go to a therapist or anything like that.
Sure.
So I thought about going on one of those trips.
Sure.
The ayahuasca trip, and it's scary. The idea of like you're gonna go down some rabbit hole and not come back. The Alice in Wonderland kind of thing. And you kind of wonder if that's going to be something that's going to enlighten me, or if it's going to take me to a darker place. It might trigger something where all of a sudden I totally just lose it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a valid fear that a lot of people have. I mean, whenever you mess with something that you're not familiar with, it's there's always the potential for disaster. However, psychedelics are remarkably safe, and if you look at the track record of everything they studied even back in the 1950s and 60s, it was very rare for somebody to actually have a psychotic break. Almost all of that, it was all propaganda.
Well, I've done something when I was in 7th grade. A friend of mine, I think he's a friend. I haven't seen him forever, but he gave me this little piece of paper. It was called blotter acid.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that it was LSD. And I just thought it was just this little piece of paper, and I did it. I took half of it. That's no big deal. And the floors were melting and people's faces were melting. And I was in school.
Oh,
I just freaked out. Here comes the principal. Are you fucking with me? What's going on here? Oop, I said the F word. We'll bleep that out. Yeah, right. And then when I got home, I went over to my friend's house and we just sat around. I could just relax a little bit. And, you see weird shit.
Well, there you go. You've done psychedelics before.
Yeah, but I didn't know that I was doing it, and I kind of had a bad experience because it was in school. And it was a
Yeah.
better experience. And it was just a little teeny tiny little piece of paper.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I hear you.
I've been studying some of that stuff, and I hear about the ayahuasca stuff where you take it, and you get all sick and shit. And
You do get sick on it. Yeah. Well, at least that's my experience. Now, not everybody does. Some people don't get sick. Some people get sick the first few times that they do it, and then they don't anymore. So I went on an ayahuasca trip earlier this year, actually, and it was a whole weekend affair. You show up on Friday, and then on Friday night you do your thing. It lasts all night long. You fall asleep as the sun's coming up. And then on Saturday
Yeah.
night, you do the same thing, and you go through the whole night. It's a whole night affair. And I did it with I did it with a group that they all trained in Brazil and Peru,
Mhm.
and with the ayahuasqueras, and they really knew what they were doing. So that was I waited. until
That's
got
what I
to the
heard. You
third
got
day.
to do it with somebody that knows what the hell's going on,
Yeah,
because it is a deep spiritual experience, if you will.
big time, big time. Yeah, and it's a little. If you don't know what you're doing, I can see how it could be a little bit unnerving as you're in the come up phase. But then there's this one part where whenever you're in it, if the more intense the trip is, the more likely it is that this is going to happen to you. But there's this point at where you start to feel a little swimmy in your head, like you can just feel just like a little bit of like almost like spinning or dizziness.
Okay, so that's what you meant by swimmy.
Yeah, yeah, and then if you don't know how to handle that, if you don't know how to ground yourself or anything like that, usually it goes to your stomach and you get sick and then you throw
Okay,
up.
so real similar to too much alcohol, and you're laying on a bed and it feels like it's spinning, and you think you got to throw up.
Yeah, yeah,
Something like
except
that.
that sometimes it doesn't you don't have that intense amount of nausea ahead of time. Not with ayahuasca. With mushrooms, I've had that intense amount of nausea ahead of time. But with ayahuasca, I didn't have an intense amount of nausea. It was like literally leading up to it, I was fine. And then all of a sudden, I was like, oh, I got to throw up. And I grabbed the bucket, because they give everybody a bucket whenever you
Right.
go in there, anticipating that you might, and a whole roll of toilet paper.
See, that's what's kind of weird about it. My background's in events and stuff, and you go to convention, you get a lanyard and a goodie bag.
Right.
Here, you get a bucket and a roll of toilet paper,
Yep.
and you
exactly.
pay for it, right?
Yep. You do. Yeah.
In more ways than one.
Right.
Financially and probably health-wise. Well, not health, but yeah.
There's a lot of benefits to health actually with ayahuasca. There's some very significant benefits to health. There's two components to it. There's the B-Cappy. I can't remember exactly how to pronounce the first name, but it's B-Cappy. That is your that's your MAOI. So
I don't know what that is.
MAOI is it's a commonly used in our Western society. MAOI is a type of psych med that they give you. It's a monoamase.
Okay.
So
a drug.
Suppressant. Yeah, basically it prevents it prevents your body from cycling certain compounds. So it can be dangerous in MAOI if you live a very normal life, because alcohol is very dangerous on an MAOI. So anytime they ever give you an MAOI, but like I said, it's common. It's a common psych med. But they give you this, you drink this MAOI, and of course it's much less than taking a big psych med of it.
Here's a disclaimer for those of you watching too. Might as well do a disclaimer thing that we don't know what the fuck we're talking about. So all this stuff that you're talking about, it's on you. You accept responsibility for your own actions. That's my disclaimer.
Right. We don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah. No, nobody really does. Everything's all different. I mean, you talk about, okay, so people going on an ayahuasca trip, everybody experiences it differently. You do mushrooms, it might be different than that, but everybody experiences it differently. So who does really know?
Sometimes. Well, ayahuasca's funny though. There's actually a bunch of different people who experience similar trips.
Yes, I've heard that too.
Yeah. It's actually the one psychedelic that has so much overlap. There's a lot of people out there that speculate that you actually are seeing different dimensional beings that are out there, because a lot of people get
Right.
beings.
And then some people are talking about like the aliens. If someone says that aliens have these almond-shaped eyes and they've got these long fingers, and everybody believes that, and that's what you see when you see an alien.
Sure. But a lot of people don't necessarily believe it, have never heard any of that going into it. That's the better way to put it. So when people go into an ayahuasca trip and you take this mixture of this, vine and this this bark and all that kind of stuff that you take.
Yeah, who the heck
It,
ever figured that out?
well, the story is actually that the ayahuasqueras originally learned the recipe back in the not Aztec, the Mayan traditions, right? They actually went back and they harvested it, and it told them how to harvest it and where to harvest it, because both the two components are on completely different sides of the area. So it's not something that an old culture would have run into easily.
Right.
They would have had to have hiked for days to go get one component of it, and hike for days to go get the other
Yeah,
component.
that's definitely a sort of a combination lock kind of situation, trying to figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
The upside with an ayahuasca type thing is it seems like it's a natural thing,
Mm-hmm.
whereas LSD kind of thing, it's a chemical, that blotter acid stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's like something you could get out of the chemistry room, mixes stuff up. It's
Yeah.
some kind of, maybe buy it at your local hardware store or something. And then the mushrooms, those are naturally, what is it? Psilocybin, it's called, right?
Psilocybin is psilocin and psilocybin are the two most commonly known active ingredients in mushrooms. Yeah.
I suppose there's lots of other plants and stuff out there that you could take and
Oh,
something
tons.
could happen to you. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
interesting.
Peyote is another one.
Yep, I heard of that
Yep.
stuff.
Yep. Yeah. So there's several cacti that are psychoactive, that are based on mescaline.
I was gonna say mescal.
Yeah. Yeah. There's mezcal's slightly different. That's an amazing drink. I like
Mescal and mescaline.
mescaline. Yep.
Those are different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, mezcal is it's a drink, but mescaline is the name of the chemical that actually makes you hallucinate and see things. Yeah,
I spent too much time practicing magic tricks. I don't understand all this stuff.
yeah, and just like in ayahuasca, it's DMT. DMT is the active ingredient that actually
Mhm.
makes you see things.
So why do you think it is that stuff like that is illegal?
Well, I mean, if you go by what happened historically, it's because the powers that be were not interested in a population that was disinterested in war. It made them too much money. So it was 1965. They actually had a big get together where all of them got together and they had a big discussion, and they were saying, "Oh, we have a problem. Ever since this psychedelics revolution has been happening, people that are taking these psychedelics, they don't want to go to war anymore. They don't like what we're doing."
Oh, so that's sort of almost like a conspiracy theory that the government's preventing us from
Right.
being enlightened.
Well, it is a conspiracy, but it's not a theory. It happened. It's well documented.
Right.
In fact, there's been several people from that time frame, including Nixon, who is the person who started the war on drugs. He came out not too long ago and actually told about the behind the scenes stuff, all regarding the drugs and how they lied. They like flat out lied. They knew they were lying.
So if all that stuff is common knowledge, how come that we just like recently had marijuana legalized in Minnesota? It is now, right?
Control. There's tons of money in it. So the reality of the situation, if they just completely deregulate, so in other words, if they just removed all of the legal control that they have over it, because legalization is saying, oh, we can let you do this, like you're regulated, right?
Now you're permission based.
Right. If it was deregulated, like
Thanks, Dad.
say growing wheat, right, is kind of deregulated. You can grow wheat in your backyard. If we had it like that, then the government wouldn't be able to make a grip of money off of it. And so that's where we're at right now. It's weird actually where we started at, because it's going to become one of the largest cash crops in the world. and it started as one of the largest cash crops in the world. So if you go back to pre cannabis illegality, right, prohibition. So if we went all the way back before that, growing hemp was actually the largest cash crop in the United States. It was our biggest export. It was bigger than anything else. And that continued until it became illegal. And then we started exporting other things. But suddenly, overnight, we all wondered why we went into a depression and why we were like, we weren't doing too well. We weren't doing too well after that because it was our largest export. It was like the biggest thing that we
Yeah, I
had.
always find it interesting when you take stuff on this, like at surface value. Like I'm trying to dig for some examples of all. It's like there's don't take drugs. It's bad for you. That's what they're trying to protect us.
Yeah,
And now you're talking about it's a money thing.
it's a money thing.
So isn't there a bunch of people that are awoke enough? I won't say woke, but they're awake enough where they say, you know what, that's bullshit.
There is now.
We're just going to revolt and we're doing our own deal.
Oh
Or
yeah, we even
the-
have somebody running for president right now who fully admits that they enjoy taking mushrooms on a regular basis, or I shouldn't say regular basis, but if you listen to his talk that he did not too long ago about it, he actually says that mushrooms are, that he has taken mushrooms and he does take mushrooms. So that would tell you.
It just
that
seems
he
like there's a
takes it
lot
on
of
regular.
laws that the government has put into place. We're shifting topics a little bit, but like something as
Mhm.
simple as a carbon monoxide detector in your home.
Right.
A child dies in a fire, and they said if they would have had carbon monoxide detectors, not a fire, the carbon monoxide. If they would have had carbon monoxide detectors, that child wouldn't die because you would have been alerted.
Right.
Therefore, now every house that gets built has to have a carbon monoxide detector.
Right.
That to me seems kind of weird. What if you have no kids, or what if you just don't want to?
Right.
Or-
Well, you can take them out. It's just whenever they build them, that's the whole thing. It's whenever they build them, they're
Sure.
regulating it. They're saying if you're going to provide this home for people, then you have to provide it safely. It's just like all of the glass.
Right. So
that
they're
they
trying to
put in
protect
there,
us. So
too.
we have to wear our little hats,
Right.
wear a helmet.
Right. Wear your helmet. Wear your seatbelt.
Yeah, all that stuff.
It's weird in Minnesota how we don't have to have a helmet, but you have to have a seatbelt.
It is weird. They should put the seatbelts on the motorcycles, right?
Put the seatbelt on there. Yeah, it's like an ejection seat to a helicopter, right?
Yes. But we know that, I know that whoever built that little buckle that goes on the seatbelts that's kind of
Yeah.
universal for all the vehicles lobbied somewhere to be able to get the contract and made it mandatory. And then they just, boom, made a whole bunch of money because all they're mandatory in all the cars now.
Right.
Same thing with the carbon monoxide detector. Somebody that makes the little button that goes inside all the carbon monoxide detectors
Right.
lobbied for it. And now their company makes a whole bunch of money.
Oh yeah.
Which is nothing wrong with making money. I'm trying to do that too. So
Right. Yeah,
But-
it's one of those things, a lot of people think we're in a capitalist market, but we're not in a capitalist market. We're in an extremely regulated market. And regulated market is not capitalism. Capitalism is free market.
right, well put. We're in a regulated market, so it's not capitalism; it's regulatoryism.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't like rules myself. I like to figure, there's ways around things and all that. But it's interesting because this all came about because I asked a question about the legality of a natural substance that grows in the woods.
Right. Yeah,
Right.
it's kind of weird. The government has spent from the time of its inception till, today, trillions and trillions of dollars on trying to eliminate these things from our culture. You got to ask yourself, why do they care so much about a plant, right? It's not for our safety. We know that because if it was for our safety, then, the lies that they've told about it wouldn't be lies, right?
Sure,
There would
there'd be
actually be
people
something
dying.
there. Yeah. But, it's not like we're talking about heroin here. People aren't dying all the time. And so we're not talking about, things like that. We're talking about a substance that when you take it makes you feel like you want to hug your neighbor. That's the big thing. So I don't know, like, are we Are we having a situation where they really truly just want to make money off of it, or is it control that they don't want to relinquish? I tend to think it's that one. I think that it started out as a big money thing because that's actually well documented. With these psychedelics, it was anti-war. With cannabis, it was because of the paper industry. It was about the fact that there was a paper mogul who made all this money off of newspaper and trees and forests and deforestation and all that kind of stuff to make paper. And he just heard about a brand new invention that had just been made where they were taking hemp and they were able to make hemp paper out of it.
Oh,
And it was brand new. And it was going to disrupt the paper industry because, you can grow 10 acres of woods and you grow 10 acres of woods and every single year you can harvest more off of 1 acre of hemp than you can off of 10 acres of woods in 10 years.
sure. Well, that makes sense too. It's like wasn't the bus line was brought in to do to disrupt the automobile industry or something like that. I can't remember how that all goes.
I don't remember how that particular one
There's
goes.
a thing like that where I shouldn't even talk about it because I don't really understand it. But there's things that are like that.
Yeah.
That it seems like, again, it's sort of a lobbyist kind of thing where big money mogul type people say, no, you ain't going to do that.
Well, sure. Viagra's one.
And how come, this country was built by we the people? Now we're getting into a political kind of weird thing, but I'm kind of right down the middle and I look on both sides and go, what the hell's going on in these sides?
It's today's world post-COVID. You can't really talk about anything without bringing the government into it at some point. It's kind of part of the problem,
But it's supposed to be our government. Do you remember the Briggs and Stratton motors? They had that little fan thing on there. When the thing spun around faster, the fan would regulate and govern the gas air fuel mixture, and it would slow the motor down.
Yep.
It would govern it. It was called the governor.
Yep.
That's what the government's supposed to be doing. It's supposed to be kind of chilling things out and kind of adjusting the sails. But we, the people, are supposed to be the people that are supposed to be running this thing.
Right.
Not these lobbyists that come in and buy favors and stuff.
Well, that's the big lie. We all really are still running it, right? Because
Supposedly,
if we allow them to do these things, then by simply allowing them to do it, we have allowed it to happen. At this point, if we want to take control or claim our government, we have to actually do it. We have to take the claim.
Right. And the illusion is you can claim it by voting for certain people.
Right. Whereas that doesn't, we've seen that doesn't work. In fact, it doesn't work so much that we actually have some of the, before COVID, after COVID, it's actually increased quite a bit. But before COVID, we actually had some of the lowest voting records ever. And yet, take Clinton's second term and later, we've actually had the closest votes ever, right? But I don't know if I really even believe half of that.
I certainly don't. I don't know enough about it because I wasn't really good in school. I didn't listen to all the different forms of government and legislature and all that. I don't understand it. I remember early on when Andrew Yang was talking about these democracy dollars, where each citizen that is of a certain age, I think it was over 18 or 21 or something like that, that's legal and not a criminal, would get X amount of dollars, and that's how they vote. They vote with those dollars instead of a lobbyist coming in and just buying. We'll support your campaign. Here's $200 million.
Yeah.
It goes back to the people. So each individual has $1 to spend or $10 to spend or $1 per candidate or something.
I've heard a couple of theories like that. There was one guy who was saying throughout the year that everybody would get a certain they would get like a certain dollar amount to spend. So everybody can only spend like $10,000. And they would say you can spend it on whatever candidate you want. And it was like, but this is what you get to spend it with. It's a representation, and everybody got it. And that was a very interesting.
Yeah, that's what I also liked about this concept of the universal basic income. Not so much that you're going to give each citizen of some money so he can sit on the couch and eat Doritos. But because it goes into the local community and stimulates the economy, because he's going to spend the money on whatever he's going to spend it on.
Yeah, I'm
in
not
the
sure what I
community.
make of that one. That's a universal basic income. I mean, the countries where we have examples of it working are extremely small countries.
Mhm.
They're like the size of Maryland.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about something that replaces your income. I'm just saying
Right.
like $500. Now that $500 to each individual, they're going to spend that.
Well, they're
in the
talking about
community.
50,000.
I know they were talking about. Well, Andrew Yang was talking about. I think it was 1,500 or something like that per person.
Yeah. Yeah, there's talk that it's going to be $50,000. That was one of the talks
No,
that
that's
they were having.
ridiculous. That's ridiculous. I'm just talking about enough to be able to stimulate a local economy.
Yeah.
So you take all of this money and you put it into small towns like Fridley and Hopkins and Minneapolis and Brainerd and Pine City. That money is going to infuse into that community. The gas stations are going to
Sure.
benefit from it, and grocery stores.
I can imagine, there was also other talks that I had heard about universal basic income. There was one that was really low. It was only 13,500, something like that. And I think it was 13,500
Per person per month or per year?
per person per year.
Okay, so yeah,
It was per person per year. So if you have a family of 2, right, then obviously it's going to be you're going to get 13,500 per person.
Sure, and if you got some kids that are 21 and still living in the house, now they got money to spend.
My understanding is it's for all of them every age. So, but you get rid of all of so that's what they were talking about, is they're talking about getting rid of all of the.
I don't know if that'd be a good idea, because then all of a sudden people start having kids.
Oh,
A
should
bunch
we?
of babies.
We don't have a future without kids.
I know, but having it be for the money purpose.
Well, I mean,
It's like I got the
that's
check.
not a whole lot. That basically covers their food and their clothing. And if everybody's getting that amount, of course, then you have to think about inflation, because inflation's going to go up, and that's out of my ballpark, though. I mean, I understand the ideas behind it and everything else, but I'm not really an economist. I don't really know the math on it. But what I can say is this: my idea on it, based on history, is that if they just started giving us that much money, that's just that much more money that they're printing.
True.
It's just going to debase the how much money's
Well,
worth.
money's an illusion anyways. It is just a representation of energy exchange.
At least right now.
all
At one
is.
point, it had a direct value. There was a direct value, but there's not a direct value.
Well, they
now.
use something to anchor it to the gold standard kind of thing. Sure.
Yeah, and they don't have that anymore. There's no anchor whatsoever.
No, now it's become, instead of a dollar being a representation of like work or energy, now it's become a unit of, are you a good person? A social, what do they call it? Social something score.
Oh, like what they have in China. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, we haven't gotten to that point yet, but I mean,
that we know of.
All the politicians think it's a great idea.
I don't
Well, I
think
shouldn't
it's
say
a good
all,
idea,
but there's a lot of them.
because I mean, who's to judge if I did something bad or not? Because I didn't open the door for that little old lady. Is that a bad thing? Because she told me she comes there because she gets to work out her right arm and she wanted to build up her bicep.
Right.
That's what she told me. Everybody else thinks I'm just being a jerk by not letting open the door for the old lady.
Or you take psychedelics for mental health, right? And you're a bad person suddenly, and your social credit score plummets.
So there's lots of little things that don't make sense to me, like speeding tickets. Why are they like $46 or whatever they are? Why 46? Why not 40? Why not just take it up to 50? Something that's easy to do.
Right.
Or why is something end up counting pennies?
I don't even believe in speeding tickets, man. I think that there's so many of these things that are just ridiculous. I'm very libertarian. I am incredibly libertarian.
It's kind of weird that the cops are hanging out waiting for someone to drive by, and we're all going 80, but not pulling down everybody.
Yeah, we had a word for it, and we had a word for it before the police were the ones that took over. We called it extortion, and it was usually mobsters that were doing it to people. Oh, hey, you're walking down our
Right.
street. You owe us a little bit. Oh, you opened up a storefront in our territory. Oh, you owe us a little bit.
Yeah, now we pay our own highway patrols.
Right.
We got to get the sheriffs involved because the sheriffs have the power. Did you know that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's constitutional sheriffs. It's a big thing. There's actually a lot of intrigue that's happened about it. Yeah, that's one thing we should watch talking about because that's one of the things they've been flagging people's accounts for and taking them down. They talk about
Oh
constitutional sheriffs.
no! New topic. We're talking about Andy of Mayberry and Barney Fife. That guy.
That's right.
He's the deputy. Yeah, I know. It's pretty interesting, all that stuff. And I really don't care much anymore. I'm kind of fed up with Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and all these accounts, these big things.
Well, Elon Musk opened everything back up. I mean, I know a lot of people are getting mad at the guy right now, but everybody gets mad at somebody who has power. But if you look at the reality of the situation, what ended up happening is that is these places like Twitter and Facebook and everything else post 9/11, because this happened post 9/11. You have to actually look at the history of it and go back. Well, after 9/11, they had the Patriot Act laws. Well, part of the Patriot Act laws is that they actually can give gag orders to various different news groups and stuff. So that extended them to various forms of media at that point. So that's the reason why they started holding a lot of these people in, behind closed doors without
Mhm.
it being showing up in media or anything else. And they would have these conversations with them, and they would say, like, we won't allow you to operate unless you play ball. You have to do what we want. So I think it started out, like, when they were doing it, I think it started out with a lot of these places protesting it. A lot of these places, there were several places that are now defunct that started fighting it, and there's few that fought it that didn't go defunct, and they of course don't fight it anymore.
Mhm.
So there was a lot of them. One of them was Apple, believe it or not. Apple fought it to begin with. They were like, no, we're not going to give you key codes to get into our people's phones. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I remember all that stuff that was happening. I
Yeah.
remember with my business dealings on Facebook, it was doing a lot better before Apple came in with that privacy issue and kind of stuff.
Yeah, there was a lot of problems with that, and then it blew out of proportion at that point on the government side of it, where they were like, oh, we're afraid of terrorists doing this, we're afraid of terrorists doing that. Well, the reality of the situation is we've always had people targeting us. We've always been at conflict with everybody else, and we decided that the one time that we got hit post, we're talking about, after World War II, after Pearl Harbor, this is the only other time we've actually ever had a major hit on our own soil. And what, we're just going to throw the Constitution out because we feel like it at that point? It's kind of ridiculous. So you look at kind of what happened after that time frame, and it's just started snowballing. And then of course now they have secret meetings, and they tell them what these social media places have to pull. They're like, oh yeah, we'll just take you down if you don't do this for us. And it's coming out that there was all these threats that were going on, and that's part of what happened with Elon Musk. Elon Musk took over Twitter, and after he took over Twitter, he actually went back and he started researching on all the documents and everything else about what happened. And so he's been spilling the beans at Congress. He's been telling them, yeah, this is just secret stuff that's been going on in the government for a while. They've been forcing people to regulate, and they're picking the winners and the losers. They don't regulate equally across the board.
What's interesting about that whole internet thing is, where is it anchored? The internet.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a whole bunch of servers all over the place.
Right.
Who's got? I mean, there's major servers, and then there's minor servers, and they're all just connected somehow.
Well, it used to be very deregulated. I mean, I remember doing it over in the BBS days. You used to have these broadcast systems that were out there, and you would just get on them and you'd go on there and read forums, which were not really forums at the time. They were at the broadcast networks. You would go on there and there'd be like little blurbs,
Yeah.
and then they'd have to take down the whole server to change anything.
But still, how is it all connected? It's connected via, well, Comcast is the popular one here.
Hot points, yeah. Well, they only run. They basically, Comcast, places like that, own the cable in the ground, and they own like the fiber. Well, if it's not in the ground, it's hanging, but they own all of that, and then they own the like layer 3 switches that basically allow you to be able to go between hot points.
So who owns the ground?
Well, that's the kicker.
Native Americans.
It would be right. That's probably if you want to talk about historical. If you really want to talk about social justice, shouldn't we be just recognizing that we're all interlopers?
Well, so if they're going to bury
least
their
most people.
cables in our ground,
Yeah,
they got to pay rent.
they do actually. Believe it or not, there's certain places where they do pay rent to these places. There was
Pay it to who though?
My ex-wife actually had a property where they ran power lines across it, and they were like, and that makes the grounds not very usable because you ran it right through the center of this 10 acres of property. So write them a letter, say, hey, like you need to do something about this because it's not allowing it to be usable. You need to pay rent for that space or something. And then, of course, they just buried it all. And they were like, oh, but you don't have mineral rights on the ground, which, believe it or not, that piece of property should have mineral rights on the ground, but they sold that back in like the 1940s. So, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of, you can own, that's one of the weird things about the United States. You can own the piece of land that you're on, but if you go down 5 feet, you don't own that anymore.
I don't get it.
It's interesting. Yeah.
I remember as a kid, my brother bought 1 square inch of Alaska. It was something on the back of a cereal box or something like that.
Oh,
And he said he was going to build a pillar up and he was going to go out with it and build a city. So he can take his 1 square inch and he's going to spread it out.
that's hilarious.
Smart kid.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
Let's see how long we've been going here. We're going for almost an hour.
Nice.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I did one of these for 2 hours with a friend of mine. His name is George. He's over in Hawaii. And he's got a podcast called the True Life Podcast. And it's all about the hallucinogenics and stuff.
It's my cup of tea.
He's an interesting character, but he was really good at asking questions. And I'd have to answer these questions. And we're just on for 2 hours.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was wild. And I don't know where went anywhere, but it fizzled out. I'd like to reconnect with them.
Yeah.
Go over to Hawaii and visit.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we shut it down?
Yeah. I mean, if you think that we've reached our time, otherwise we're having a good conversation. We can keep going.
We've covered, I see, the women's empowerment event.
Yeah,
That's your wife's thing.
that's my wife's thing. We here at Your Authentic Reflections, we are having a women's empowerment event coming up. We only have 40 tickets available. We have a space here at Your Authentic Reflections in New Hope. If you look it up online, make sure you're looking it up on Google. Some of the other maps that are out there still show us at our old location in Mound, which is not correct.
It's going to take some time.
Yeah, we're right off of 42nd here in New Hope, and it's going to be great. She has some speakers. There's going to be some live music. In this case, it's going to be singing bowls, and then they're going to talk about women's issues and whatever that means. I don't know. They're planning to talk about just things that people have gone through in their culture and their life. That's unique.
Well, it's a women's empowerment thing, and she's told me it's going to be a series.
Yeah,
she's looking to do it And that's kind of what sort of stemmed our conversation because
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of women's things. There's not a lot of men's things. And then part of it, I
Mm-hmm.
think, is because men are kind of more like, why don't we just hang out together
I
and
also
talk?
think it's because a lot of it got shut down. I mean, we used to have the YMCA, and they still have the YWCA, so the Young Women's Association is still around, but the Young Men's Association is no longer
Well,
around.
the
I mean, it
YMCA,
still exists, but it's co-ed now.
it's more of a gym now. It's not really a men's
Yeah.
club.
Well, it used to be. It used to be specifically designed for young men to keep young men off of the streets and out of trouble, and to help them, like to mentor them and help them forward.
Mhm.
And that's what it was geared towards. And we used to have men's clubs all over the place, and slowly but surely, all of them have been shut down. In fact, if you are going to college, they don't even have the fraternities really at a lot of places anymore. Most of them have closed.
Are they closed because it's boring, or were they shut down? Were they
Some places they were shut down. Some places they voted themselves out of existence.
shut down by who?
The college campuses. It is some of them. I mean, not all of them, but it's been a long, concentrated effort on this idea of removing misogyny by removing every way that men spend time with other men. And I don't think that the two equate at all.
No, you're right. It doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, there's the idea of this misogynistic old world kind of club, if you will, that men used to go to have backroom deals and stuff like that. But I don't think that's the world that we live in anymore. It's really not. And they were bound to evolve just like everything else. And here we are, and now we're just bereft of a way of being able to hang out with other men and actually talk about things that we need to talk about. I think it's coming back though.
Well, I see. I think it's a YouTube channel. It's a bunch of men talking to a bunch of women,
Mm-hmm.
and they're basically talking about what
I
do
see
women
that one.
really want or what do men really want. And a lot of the women are clueless of what men actually do want.
Right.
They think they want a woman, but they don't kind of really need. I got all the money I need. I'm looking for someone to hang out with. I'm looking for a friend,
Yeah.
not just a hooker.
Right.
You can buy
Right.
them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's really the thing. Like, there's a lot of men that are out there that realize that
I want a woman that's not a
sexual.
commodity.
Right. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. We want women that aren't a commodity, because if they're a commodity, that means anyone can buy them.
Sure.
If they're
you
not a
lose your-
commodity, that means that we had to earn it. And if
My
we can
wife
earn
left me.
that, then it'd be
It was
great.
a higher bidder.
Right.
Lost
Right.
my wife to a higher bidder.
But it's true. I mean, that's something that I think that we as males have actually had a lot of happen to us in society.
Well, it used to be
overall.
the man was the breadwinner, so to speak, and then women started learning how to make money, and they ended up doing it. I mean, they're end up making good money, so
Right.
they don't need the man anymore. They used to have the man to protect them, and now
Right.
they can conceal and carry. They don't need the man anymore. They're okay.
Right. Right. Yeah, but I don't think that it really has. I don't really think that
it
has
doesn't.
bearing on a lot of the social changes that have been happening. I think that a lot of it has to do with misconceptions. There's a lot of misconceptions about what it means to be a man that's out there, that a lot of people have gotten from watching TV. Like, TV is real.
Well, yeah, there is the gothic romance novels, or the way that TV or movies portray
Right.
males and females.
And Anne Rand didn't do anybody any favors either,
Yeah.
with all her rape fantasies.
It's just that the male brain and the female brain work differently, or we'll say the masculine brain and the feminine brain. They
Yeah.
just function differently.
That is a better way of putting it,
Yeah.
because there are some women that are on the other spectrum of things that work differently. They're more mechanically oriented, and their brains are more fixed like that. Usually happens with women who are autistic, that they tend to be more like males in how they have an outlook on the
Mhm.
world. So it's not 100% of the time, but it's true most of the time. Whenever you're talking about women and men, they just perceive the world differently. They have different needs, they have different desires, they have different things they like to even talk about. Like some men don't even like talk. They'd be like, "Hey, want to go work on the car? Sure. Let's go sit and work on the car and not talk to each other except for ask for a wrench for hours."
Right. Yeah, it is different. Sometimes women just want you to listen to them. You
Right.
don't need to fix it, but the guy wants to fix the stuff, and then just
Right.
chill out, just listen to what's going on.
It's funny because those same women, if you want the same thing from them, so like if you were to like talk to them and like try to get the same thing back, the same women will have a similar response of like, "Oh, well, here, let me give you a bunch of suggestions on how you can fix
There
that." And
is
you're like,
that.
"No, I just want you to listen."
There is that, and I think it's part of that is there's been an influx of coaches. A lot of
Yeah.
people are coaches, and
Mhm.
that's what happens sometimes. You end up being coached,
Yeah.
and I just want to express myself, and then just let's go to bed. Done.
Right.
I'm tired,
Right.
but let's solve this problem. Let's do a spreadsheet. Let's do a
Yeah.
analysis of your business or something.
Right.
I don't want to do that. I just wanted to bitch about it because I had a bad customer and I don't like him anymore. So
Exactly.
he's gone.
I
Problem's
just
over.
wanted to vent for a minute.
Yeah, sometimes it's that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that there's a lot that men would like to talk about with other men that they actually would like to keep to themselves. I just honestly think that there is. I've gone to a couple of men's events, including the ayahuasca journey that I went on, where I've actually been shocked about the topics that have been talked about, just simply because it's not something I would have normally expected inside a men's event.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of feelings being discussed.
True.
And normally you don't expect that in a men's group, right? Where they're talking about a lot of feelings. But I suppose an ayahuasca retreat,
True. It lowers
that would
your
make sense,
lowers
right?
your defenses a little bit.
Well, you're all going there. You're about to experience something serious together, and it is something that puts you in a vulnerable situation. So being vulnerable with the people around you is inherent to the situation. So that vulnerability that you're feeling with everybody else, and being vulnerable and being able to open yourself up vulnerably in an emotional way, is just inherent to the situation. So it made it really easy for people to do that. I don't know if it'd be the case if men were just getting together
No,
for
I think
talks.
maybe something like that. Like they say that alcohol is like the truth serum. All of a sudden, you start spilling your guts when you drink it. And the ayahuasca might take you into more of a spiritual space where you're
Mhm.
discussing about what you actually truly do desire.
Yeah, yeah, there was some of that. There was also a lot of crying over just things that happen to people in people's lives, because men are used to having to be strong, right?
Mhm.
Like it's not just men that want us to be strong. I mean, let's make that clear. A lot of people think that men walk around telling each other, "You got to be tough all the time," and that's the reason why men are tough. That's not the case. The world teaches you that you have to be tough. If you're a guy and you want to go do something and you go out and you try to do it, it's basically there's like a handful of ways you can go do it, and if you fail, nobody says, "Oh, poor you," as a guy. Maybe your dad or your mom does. Usually not your dad. It'd usually be your mom or your aunt, right?
They kiss the boo boo.
Right, right. But it's like more one of those things where they're like, "Oh, yeah, this is all right. Get up to go do it again," right? But as far as like the way that men usually treat men, you think men treat women bad. You should see how men treat men. It's like, it's more like, "Look at you, pussy." I mean, that's just how guys would treat each other for years and years and years, because we were afraid to be vulnerable and talk about our feelings. I think more and more guys are just coming to understand that, expressing that part is really, it's not a shame on yourself. And we don't have the same village structure anymore. We don't have the same uh kind of tribe or anything like that. We don't even have the same cities and neighborhoods the way that we used to whenever I was a
Right.
kid, right? Everybody moves around at the drop of a hat now. So it just, there's constantly new people around you all the time. Building those long-term relationships where you feel comfortable talking to each other, well, we have to expound our boundaries now. We're actually having to learn how to have those conversations with people that maybe didn't know us whenever we were kids.
Yeah,
And
like
that's a good thing.
the neighbors don't necessarily talk so much anymore. They don't
Right.
come over and sit on the other person's porch or anything like that. It's more
Right.
like a nod while you're driving to work or something.
Right. Yeah, whenever I was a kid, if my mom fell down and broke her leg, and I went next door and I was like, "Hey, we need somebody to watch the house." Well, we're gone. Somebody's gonna watch the house. Like, I need to rush my mom to the emergency room. We need your help. They'd help. They'd figure out a way to help.
Mhm.
Right. Nowadays, they're gonna be like, "Why didn't you call 911?"
Right. Yeah,
Somebody
just
else needs to take care of it, and that's
outsource.
a big thing in our current society.
Mhm.
I remember there's several years ago now. It's probably maybe a decade ago now. I was in downtown Minneapolis, and I'm driving along, and I go and I stop at this store that I used to go to all the time. It was a hydroponic store, so they had a ton of there for like growing and lighting and all kinds of stuff like that. It was this hydroponic store, and I go there, and I am getting ready to go into the store, and I notice this old man across the street, and he falls down. It's in the middle of winter. He slips and he falls, and he can't get back up. And he slips and he falls. People just literally just walked right by him. They ignored him. They walked right by him. They looked at him like, "Oh, that could be a scam or something like that."
Sure.
They just literally just walked right by. And then there was nobody more that was walking along the street for miles, right? But there was people driving by. Nobody stopped. Nobody did anything. So I parked my car and turned it off, because I'm getting ready to go in the store anyways. It just makes sense. I'm just going to go across the street and go help this old guy. I go across the street and I go help him up. And by the time that I get over there, because it's a busy street, it's kind of hard to get across. And I go over there, and this old man is like shivering on the ground and covering himself up and is shivering. And I go to go help him back up and help him go along. And if I wouldn't have gone there, it would have been a while before anybody got there. It was a good 10 minutes after I helped him up that an ambulance finally showed up.
Oh,
If you're 80 years old, I've got to guess he was probably 70, 80 years old based on just how he looked. And he had bruises on him, so he clearly was not in the best of shape. And you get an old man like that, 10 minutes in the middle of winter, laying on ice on the ground.
it's over.
Yeah, he might not make it. People can't wait that long. They need you to react. And we as a society just don't do that for each other as much anymore. We expect someone else to do it. We hire people for that. It's weird. Lack of responsibility.
It is, and like you
your
said, it might
environment.
be a scam kind of thing. There's a lot of that. I mean, you see the homeless people begging on the corners and stuff,
Sure.
and you don't really want to give them money. Maybe you bring them a sandwich or something so they actually use it rather than spend it on something that you don't want to spend it on.
Sure. But I'm far more likely to risk for things like that. I mean, it's whenever I first moved out here, there was a gentleman who was begging, and couldn't have been much older than I was at the time. I was 22 at the time, and I didn't have much myself. I was looking for work and everything in downtown, and I was in an area that is known for not being that great, and guys asking for money, and I was like, I'm not going to give you money, but if you're hungry, I'll buy you a meal. I'm about to go have lunch. Would you like to have lunch with me? So I took him to go have lunch with me. And I think that if more people in our society just took responsibility for what's around us, I think we would be doing a lot better, because right now people just they're not spending as much time as they should with each other.
Well, it's the unknown too. It might be just somebody that's trying to get money that they're going to use for something not good or whatever. I had a guy do that to me once in the Uptown area. He wanted to borrow $20, and he said his grandpa owns the car dealership that's over on Central and 40th or something like that.
Mhm.
I'm not sure exactly where it was, but I knew that place, and he said that was his grandpa's car dealership. And if I
Sure.
came there tomorrow at 4 o'clock, he'd give me $20 back. He wasn't there.
Of course.
So now I got a story to tell.
Yeah.
So it was a
Yeah.
$20 story. It was an investment.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't look at it like you're getting ripped off.
Oh
right?
yeah, some of that happens, and I think that that's probably just as common. But if you see somebody fall in the street, it doesn't even fall into the same category. And it's not like we're talking about in a young man and there was nobody else around. So it's not like you're going to go help this guy up and somebody's going to jump out of the bushes.
Well,
There's no bushes nearby.
Here's a story. A friend of mine, he was over at the University of Minnesota, and he was opening the door for this woman, and she looked at him like, I can open my own door. So he thought, if this is closed from the outside, you can't open it. If I let it go, it's going to be locked, and you have to walk around the whole building. And she goes, I can open my own door. So he said, fine. All of a sudden, click. And she couldn't get in. She had to walk around. So she was so snobby that he found a little bit of pleasure in showing her that there's a gentleman trying to hold the door for her and you don't want to? Okay, fine.
Right.
So that can start
Yeah.
happening too. It's unfortunate.
I think men get a lot of that right now. I've had that happen to me. The whole open a door for somebody and then
There is
get
that.
crabby at
There's the woman that needs to be powerful.
me. Mhm.
I don't need you. I can make my own money. I can do my own thing.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to be nice, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, going back to, men talking about emotions and things like that, I think that's, I think that it's nice that we do have this evolution that's happening. And I think that it's nice that people are recognizing that it's starting to get over the top, that people are, saying like men shouldn't do this or shouldn't do that as far as like opening doors for people. It's starting to get over the top. So now men get blamed for all kinds of ridiculous things that just really, it's not really always true.
And
And even if it's true about one person, not everybody.
yeah, you can't broad brush everything. It
Right.
doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way for anything.
But the thing about needs, if you really define that word, all we
Mhm.
really need is like air and food, shelter.
Mhm.
There's not a lot of other stuff we need
Right.
other than maybe touch,
Mhm.
But,
Communication.
everything else is
touch.
kind of a desire.
Yep.
I don't need you to cook dinner for me because I can make a steak.
Right. Exactly.
But I would desire that. That would be nice if you made a little meal and put a little candle, and that's a femmy thing, but it's kind of cool.
Right. Yeah. There's this guy I watch on it's on TikTok actually. All he does is cooks meals on it. And you don't ever see him, and it's always by this river, and he's cooking it over a campfire. And he's always cooking these like real monstrous meals, and he cooks two of them. He cooks one for his dog and one for himself. It's really cool, but it's amazing the way he cooks the stuff. But yeah, I bring it up because it's one of those things. Yeah, that's true. Men can do a lot of these things themselves.
Well, you know what's happened since like the industrial
Everybody
age, where you have to like be strong enough to move, drive a tractor, and you got some
Mhm.
physical,
We required muscle back
masculine
then.
brawn and all that. And now all of a sudden we've got other things where if you can work a laptop, you can start doing something. You can make a living
Right.
doing that. And now it's getting to be to the point where you can just get on a TikTok channel and make meals for you and your dog. And he's probably making money from the views, and maybe he's
Oh, I can
sponsored by
guarantee it.
some kind of cooking store or something.
Something. Yeah, it's probably a cast iron store because he's always cooking
But
on
it's
a cast
gotten to
iron
be
skillet.
where you just need one of these things,
Yeah.
and you can get access to all that. And I'd see guys on TikTok, and they're in a little kayak and they're bass fishing.
Yeah.
That's what he's doing, and that's basically how he's making his living. He's just fishing.
Yeah.
So it's weird the ways that there are to earn an income these days. Where
There
it's-
are some weird ones.
it's almost too many opportunities. It's hard to focus on one. Where this guy
Yeah.
had a passion for cooking
Mhm.
and he had a dog.
Right.
So he said, my camera's up. I'm just going to cook.
And he liked cooking on an open fire.
And he
So,
just does it. Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, there's weird ones. Geez, I can't even think of any examples off the top of my head. Well, your Stickman figure one, that's one.
That was a YouTube channel. He
Right.
just liked to do these little animation things.
That's the weirdest thing in the world for somebody to make money in animation when all of their animation is basically stick figures. Right.
But there's some of these people that will just put a camera up at work and then just do their job. And then
Yeah.
people tend to look at it, and if people are scrolling through, that's a view, that's a view, that's a view.
Right.
If there's 17,000 people on the planet, they're interested in watching some guy drive a train.
Right.
He's getting views and he's getting tips on the side with all those views. somehow.
Right. Yeah, there's
kinda
one
weird.
guy I watched who was a fry cook, and all he did all day long was fry things, and you would just see him like put it in,
Yeah.
and then he takes it out, and you get to see it all golden, and people are going, "Oh, that looks so yummy," and he's getting all these views and these likes and these hearts.
know,
And if
it's
anybody knows
bizarre.
that thing is on TikTok, you can give like roses, and which of course equates to money, and people are just throwing money
It
at him
does.
because he's a fry cook. It's like, okay.
I knew a guy that he drove Uber and Lyft, and his thing was how to make $100,000 a year driving Uber and Lyft. And I was driving Lyft at that time. I wasn't making 100,000, but that's interesting. And the way he's making his money is part of it. He's showing them some of the other revenue streams. They can have the little snack things in the back seat. You can sell these little snacks while you're driving people around.
Mhm.
Ways to get better tips. And then, of course, he had books that he sold or courses of how to make more money as an Uber driver, selling it to other Uber drivers. And that's how he made his $100,000.
Right.
So there's ways of doing it if you get kind of creative with it.
Yeah.
And figure things out. I've got some online stuff that I make a little bit. It's not $100,000 yet, but it's a few things that are kind of automatically working.
Sure.
But then at any time, you could lose your TikTok account or lose your Facebook account or lose your Twitter account or
Yeah.
lose your LinkedIn account.
Yeah, they can just demonetize you.
Yeah.
They don't like something you say, like
Or-
talking about psychedelics.
Or suppress it.
Boom.
Or
Or
just suppress it.
Yeah.
Looks like we got one comment on there. I don't know who that is, but I will check
Oh, sweet.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
I would guess that it's my friend Mike Wilkie. He's a magician friend of mine that is a cartoonist. And he does little cartoons of magic cartoons and other stuff too.
Awesome.
Watermelon bones, but I bet that's probably him. It's
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know for sure.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have to do this again. And, the plan is to do this every Monday. And of course, we're going to have topics to talk about on various different times. And hopefully we'll do a good job not to meander too much.
Well, you never know. You don't know if someone's watching this now or they're watching it tomorrow, or they might find it tonight, or they might watch part of it, or they might rewatch all of it. And it might turn into be something. I don't know. If there's not a lot of men's events out there, maybe this will turn into something. So who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. We're also
Yeah.
hoping to do this live. So we
That's
actually,
right.
we want to have people that we interview. We're going to host it at the studio, Your Authentic Reflections, and, get an audience here where people can ask questions. My background is I was a network engineer, and I have an expertise in psychedelics and just also lots of random knowledge. And
You do got lots of
Similar.
strange things. Yeah, I've got knowledge in different areas because
Yeah.
you're talking about like anime. I never even thought about that. I see that stuff and it looks like a cartoon, and I can't figure out what it makes any sense. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm trying to figure out different marketing strategies and how to leverage things and automate and delegate and
right.
all that kind of stuff. And then my magic mind. So that's the story of Morning Glory. I think we're done with this.
All
What
right.
time is it? 6:10. So we went from 5 to 6.
Sweet.
Boom. Okay, I'm going to turn it off. Peace.
All right.